Tonight, the Narin Passage reopened after a pre-dawn strike broke Tehran's cordon.
From Port Selvar, officials say 2 Raven gunships disabled the patrol line.
Orellan officials now say secure transit is restored and further threats will fail.
They never saw it coming. Not on radar, not on sonar, not on any watch system the IRGC had placed across the Strait of Hormuz. One moment, the fleet was moving, engines on, crews at their posts. Iran's most aggressive naval force was working with the confidence of a power that thought it owned these waters. The next moment, silence. Not the silence of a short pause, the silence of things stopping their existence. No warning shot, no radio message, no final threat sent across military channels. Just 2 AH-64 Apaches flying low, flying fast, flying dark, and the Hellfire missiles they carried. In less time than it takes to read a situation report, Iran's most feared of all blockade fleet was gone. You did not just click on another military video tonight. You clicked on the story of how the most advanced attack helicopter ever built, in one coordinated strike, tore apart what Iran had spent years, setting up as its final checkmate move in the Persian Gulf. What happened in the Persian Gulf that night has been talked about in defense briefings, studied in strategy journals, and argued over in war colleges, but it has never been told like this. Do not go anywhere, because what led to this moment matters just as much as what happened in the dark over Hormuz. To understand what was destroyed that night, you first need to understand what Iran built. For decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGCN, had built what military experts called an asymmetric swarm strategy. The idea was simple. Iran knew it could never match the United States Navy. Carrier for carrier, destroyer for destroyer, submarine for submarine. That fight could not be won, and everyone in Tehran knew it. So they built something different. Not a normal fleet made to fight in open water, a swarm. Hundreds of small, fast attack boats, missile-armed patrol vessels, speedboats carrying rocket-propelled grenades, suicide drones launched from mobile platforms. All of it was built not to defeat the U.S. Navy in a normal battle, but to flood it, to swarm it, to make the cost of entering the Gulf so high that no commander would dare take the risk. Their main tactic was called anti-access area denial, or A2/AD. The goal was clear: turn the Strait of Hormuz into a kill zone, make it impossible for any enemy force to enter without taking terrible losses, make the cost of a fight so painful that the United States would always choose talks over action. And for years, it worked. In 2019, the Iranian fast boats harassed commercial tankers in the Gulf. In 2020, they swarmed U.S. naval vessels in international waters. In 2023, they seized commercial ships under the shadow of their missile batteries. Every time, the message was the same: we own these waters, and you cannot stop us. But here is what made the IRGC strategy truly dangerous. It was not just aggression, it was smart aggression. They studied how America answered threats. They knew the rules of engagement that U.S. naval commanders had to follow. They knew exactly how far they could go before causing a real attack. And they stayed one step inside that line. Every provocation was carefully measured. Every escalation was controlled. They had trained their fast boat crews in anti-helicopter tactics, hard turns, infrared countermeasures, and showing the smallest radar profile possible. They had deployed the Masag-2, a man-portable surface-to-air missile made specifically for low-flying air threats. They had placed radar-guided anti-aircraft guns on their larger patrol vessels. The IRGC was not just daring America to act. They were daring America to act and getting ready for the answer. On paper, they had covered every angle, but there was something the IRGC commanders had not fully counted on, something that changes every tactical equation the moment it appears on the battlefield. And it does not announce itself. It does not make a sound. It just shows up low on the horizon, running dark. And by the time you know it is there, the fight is already over. The AH-64 Apache. The mission was planned with the kind of precision that does not happen in days. No, it happens over weeks. Intelligence assets had been tracking the IRGC formation for most of a month. Satellite passes, signal intercepts, pattern of life analysis on every vessel in the blockade force, when they moved, where they anchored, how they rotated crews, which ships carried the heaviest weapons, and which one was running the command and control network for the whole formation. The target package identified 18 IRGC naval vessels operating in a coordinated formation across the northern approach to the Strait of Hormuz. Not all were frontline combat ships, but all were part of the blockade system. Patrol craft, radar pickets, command and communications vessels, fast attack boats armed with Chinese-made C-802 anti-ship missiles. Together, they form the front edge of Iran's area denial network, the wall that Tehran had built to keep the U.S. Navy out. 2 AH-64 Apache longbow helicopters were given the strike mission. 2 against 18, 4 crew members in total, 2 pilots, 2 co-pilot gunners against an entire naval blockade formation with hundreds of personnel, anti-aircraft systems, infrared countermeasures, and surface-to-air missiles. On paper, those odds look wrong, but the Apache does not fight on paper. They launched from a forward operating base in the darkness before dawn. No radio transmissions after liftoff, no transponder, no navigation lights. They flew nap of the Earth at extremely low altitude, following the shape of the water, thermal signatures reduced, electronic emissions kept low. To the IRGC fleet, they were invisible. To every radar system Iran had placed across the strait, they did not exist. Just dark sky, quiet water, and 2 shapes moving just above the surface, closing the distance at a speed that gave no time to react. This is where most people misunderstand what the Apache really is. They hear attack helicopter, they imagine something powerful but normal. Air support, suppressing ground fire, covering infantry movement. The AH-64 Apache is not that. What was about to happen over Hormuz would show exactly what it is. At 12 kilometers from the outer edge of the IRGC formation, the lead Apache did something no other attack helicopter on Earth could do. It activated the longbow, on a millimeter wave radar dome mounted just above the main rotor, the unique shape that gives the Apache longbow its name. In one sweep, it scanned the entire IRGC formation, every vessel, every radar signal, every heat source. In 4.9 seconds, the system had identified, classified, and ranked all 18 targets out of a capacity of 256 targets. Tonight, it only needed 18. Radar picket vessel marked highest priority, take out the eyes first. Command and communications vessel, second priority, kill the brain. Fast attack boats third, remove the weapons. The targeting list filled itself in automatically. The system did not wait for human input on the firing order. It already knew the best kill chain. It had calculated the engagement order, missile flight paths, and chance of kill for each target before the pilot had even finished reading the screen. The lead pilot checked the list and confirmed the first target lock. The co-pilot gunner in the front seat armed the weapon system, 16 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, 8 on each stub wing, laser and radar guided, effective range over 8 kilometers, accuracy measured in centimeters, each one able to destroy an armored vehicle, a hardened bunker, or a naval vessel, 16 precision kills loaded on 1 helicopter, and tonight there were 2 Apaches, 32 Hellfires between them. The lead pilot's thumb moved to the release. On the IRGC radar picket vessel, roughly 11 kilometers away, a crewman on the front deck noticed something. Not on radar, not on any system on the ship. He felt it, a low shake in the air. Something that did not match the wind, did not match the normal sound of the engines idling below him, did not match anything in the threat guide his training had prepared him for. He turned toward the sound, narrowed his eyes into the dark, reached for the radio handset on his vest. The first Hellfire had already left the rail, not with a roar, with a hiss, a sharp, pressurized breath as solid propellant ignited, then nothing. No visible trail in the darkness, no flash, no sound that would travel across 11 kilometers of open water, just physics. Closing the distance at Mach 1.3, flight time from launch to impact at that range, 7 seconds, 7 seconds. The crewman's hand was still on the radio. He never pressed transmit. Impact, the radar picket, the vessel responsible for giving early warning to the entire IRGC formation, was hit amidships. The Hellfire's tandem warhead, built to punch through reactive armor on main battle tanks, went through the hull like it was not even there. Secondary explosion, fuel igniting. The vessel leaned hard to port and started taking on water immediately. The IRGC formation's eyes went dark. Before the sound of the first explosion had even finished moving across the water, the second Hellfire was already tracking. The command vessel, the brain of the whole blockade operation, the node that was supposed to receive the warning from the radar picket, process it, and coordinate every defensive move. That warning never came. The second Hellfire hit the command vessel's communications array first, a precision strike that cut every outgoing data link at the same time. The third Hellfire followed 4 seconds later into the vessel's center mass. In the space of 20 seconds, the IRGC formation had lost its ability to see and its ability to think. What remained was muscle with no brain. The second Apache opened fire. While the lead ship had been making the priority kills, radar picket, command vessel, L9, the wingman, had been holding at the outer edge of the engagement zone, longbow radar tracking the remaining 16 vessels in real time. Every course change, every speed change, every attempt to scatter was being plotted, predicted, and fed into the targeting computer before the helmsman had even finished turning the wheel. Now the wingman engaged the outer ring of the formation, the fast attack boats that gave the swarm its offensive power. Hellfire, Hellfire, Hellfire. 3 missiles in quick sequence, 3 direct hits. 3 vessels that had been carrying anti-ship missiles powerful enough to threaten a destroyer turned into burning wrecks in under 10 seconds. The IRGC crews on the remaining vessels were in total chaos, radio screaming on every channel, engines at full throttle, boats turning in every direction, some toward the Apaches, some away, some in circles, because no one was coordinating anymore. The command vessel was gone, the radar picket was gone, the senior officer who was supposed to tell them what to do was gone, and then one boat did something different. One fast attack boat, the PACAP 3, Iran's fastest naval intercept craft, broke hard away from the formation. Its crew had trained for this anti-helicopter doctrine. Hard turn to show the smallest profile, infrared jammer on. The gunner on the rear deck pulled the Masag 2 launcher onto his shoulder, a heat-seeking surface-to-air missile that had been placed there for exactly this moment. He picked up a thermal signature in the sky, steadied his aim, and started the lock sequence. They were doing everything right, every step exactly by the book, exactly as they had practiced. The Hellfire hit them in mid-turn because the book had been written for a different generation of threats, and the Apache's infrared suppression system had cut its thermal signature down to only a small part of what the Masag 2 needed to lock on. What the gunner had been tracking was not the helicopter. It was a false heat return from the first vessel's burning fuel. He was aiming at the wrong heat source. He never got the chance to fix it. The lead Apache had used its priority Hellfires, but the fight was not over. Scattered across the water, several smaller IRGC vessels were trying to run at full speed, moving without lights, abandoning the formation completely. This is where the M230 came in, a 30mm automatic chain gun mounted under the Apache's nose, 625 rounds per minute. No, but what makes the M230 different from any other weapon on any other helicopter is how it is aimed. It is linked to the pilot's helmet, the integrated helmet and display sight system, IHADSS. Wherever the pilot looks, the gun follows. No manual tracking, no separate targeting system. You turn your head, the gun turns with you. You look at a vessel fleeing at 40 knots. The gun is already pointed at it. The lead pilot tracked a fleeing fast attack boat, looked at it. The M230 fired a 3-second burst, 60 rounds of 30 millimeter high explosive. The fast attack boat came apart. Not in some huge movie scene, not in some dramatic flash. It simply stopped being a working vessel, hull broken, engine destroyed, crew in the water. Within seconds, the pilot's eyes moved to the next target. The gun moved with them. 14 Hellfire missiles, direct hits, every single one. 30 millimeter cannon used to neutralize the remaining threats. Total time from the first Hellfire launch to the last engagement, 9 minutes and 17 seconds. When the firing stopped, the IRGC formation that had been operating as a coordinated naval blockade, the force that had closed the northern approach to the Strait of Hormuz and dared the most powerful navy on Earth to do something about it, was a scattered collection of burning, leaning, disabled vessels spread across 4 kilometers of dark water. The Apaches did not circle back. They did not check again. They did not need to. The longbow radar had already confirmed every kill in real time, matching impact data with the original target list. 100% engagement rate, 0 missiles wasted, 0 missed targets. And the 2 helicopters dropped back toward the waterline and disappeared into the same silence they had come from. In the hours that followed, the Strait of Hormuz changed, not slowly, not through days or weeks of diplomatic talks. In hours, the IRGC vessels that had been physically blocking the northern approach were gone or disabled. The radar coverage they had been maintaining collapsed. The command and control network that guided their movement was cut apart. For the first time in months, the shipping lanes through Hormuz were open, with no one contesting them. In Tehran, the reaction was not what the IRGC's public message would later claim. Behind closed doors, senior commanders were facing questions they could not answer. How had 2 helicopters passed through their radar network without being seen? Why had the longbow system been able to classify and attack their whole formation before one single vessel could answer? Why had their anti-aircraft defenses, the Massage 2 launchers, the radar-guided guns, the countermeasures they had placed specifically to stop this kind of attack, failed to engage even one incoming missile? How had the one crew that did everything right, the PACAP 3, the boat that followed doctrine perfectly, still been destroyed before finishing its lock sequence? The answers were painful. Their radar network had been built to detect fast jets at altitude. The Apaches flew below it at wave height in the electromagnetic shadow of the ocean surface. Their anti-aircraft gunners had been trained to track aircraft moving quickly across their view. Beyond that, the Hellfires gave them 7 seconds and came from a direction no one was watching. Their command vessel, the node that was supposed to guide every defensive response, was the second target destroyed, and the one crew that managed to react aimed at the wrong heat source because the Apache's thermal suppression had made the real aircraft almost invisible to their seeker. The entire defensive system had been torn apart, not by overwhelming force, not by superior numbers, but by 2 helicopters that understood the IRGC system better than the IRGC did and had been built to use every single weakness in it in under 10 minutes. By morning, the United States Navy confirmed that unrestricted passage through the Strait of Hormuz had been restored, commercial shipping resumed. Markets that had been pricing in the danger of a long blockade settled down as the news reached trading desks around the world. Now let us talk about what this operation means. Beyond the immediate military result, Iran's swarm strategy, the asymmetric doctrine that the IRGC had spent decades building and perfecting, rested on one basic idea about modern war. That quantity could beat quality, that enough small, fast, cheap vessels could overwhelm even the most advanced military force through pure numbers and aggression. The Apache just proved that idea wrong. The longbow radar system was built specifically for exactly this threat, the ability to track and engage hundreds of targets at the same time was not an accident. It was a direct answer to swarm doctrine. American military planners had studied the IRGC strategy for years. They had built the answer to it, placed it into the Apache platform, and waited for the moment it would be needed. That moment came over Hormuz, and the result was not a close fight. It was not a costly win. It was a demonstration, clinical, precise, and deeply unsettling for every military planner in Tehran, that the swarm strategy has a basic weakness. When your enemy can see all of your vessels at once, rank them by threat level, and strike them faster than any human coordinator can react, the swarm becomes a target list. That is what the IRGC fleet was on the night of the strike, a target list. The larger strategic meaning reaches far beyond this one operation. Every nation that has studied Iranian tactics as a model for challenging American naval power is now doing the math again. The swarm doctrine was influential. It shaped military planning from the South China Sea to the Black Sea to the Baltic. Tonight, that doctrine now has a case study attached to it. And that case study is not good news for those who adopted it. The Strait of Hormuz belongs to international waters. It always has. The right to move through it freely is not something any nation can give or take away. It is established under international law and has been defended by force when needed since the tanker wars of the 1980s. Tonight, that right was defended again, not with sanctions, not with diplomatic protests, not with emergency meetings of international bodies that release statements and do nothing. With 2 helicopters, 32 Hellfire missiles between them, and 9 minutes of precise, coordinated, devastating work, the AH-64 Apache has been flying combat missions for nearly 40 years. Yet in that time, it has fought in more theaters, destroyed more targets, and shaped more battlefields than almost any other weapon system in the American arsenal. It has been upgraded, modernized, and improved so many times that the aircraft flying tonight shares almost nothing in capability with the one that entered service in 1986. But one thing has never changed: what the Apache does when it arrives and the silence it leaves behind. Because that is the part no one talks about. Not the missiles, not the radar, not the 30-millimeter cannon that follows your eyes. The silence. The IRGC fleet that controlled the northern approach to the Strait of Hormuz believed they were operating in their own territory, that their numbers would protect them, that their radar would warn them, that their countermeasures would give them time. They were wrong on every point. And the lesson that will be studied in military academies and war colleges for years after tonight is a simple one. When the United States decides that a blockade is over, it is over. Hormuz is open tonight, not because of an explosion anyone heard, not because of a battle anyone saw, but because of a silence that settled over the northern strait and has not lifted since. The 2 Apache crews landed back at their forward operating base in the gray light before sunrise, shut down their engines, took off their helmets, and walked across the tarmac in the kind of quiet that only comes after a mission where everything went exactly the way it was supposed to. No cameras were waiting. No one would be saying their names on the evening news. Yeah, their faces would not appear in any report the public would ever read, but somewhere in Tran, in a room with no windows and too many telephones, a senior IRGC naval commander was staring at a digital map of the Strait of Hormuz, a map that, as of tonight, had 18 fewer icons on it, and he understood, maybe for the first time, that the waters he had claimed to control had never really been his. Mission complete. If this gave you something, hit subscribe and leave a comment. Apache versus Ka-52 Alligator, America's Silent Hunter versus Russia's Armored Predator. Who survives a head-to-head fight over open water? Drop your answer. I read every single one because the Apache was only one chapter, and this story is far from over. I will see you in the next